Welcome, one and all, to Americans Learn. My name is Kit, and we continue on with our glorious campaign with one Gaius Julius Caesar in Gaul, Roman history documentary that was made by none other than the great kings and generals. And today we continue on with the glorious campaign with the Battle of the Sabas River. So we are seeing Julius Caesar face off against numerous opponents, and so far right now there seems to be a confederation, an alliance of sort of various tribes that want to resist against Julius Caesar due to the fact of Rome's growing influence in Gaul and the tribes now standing against him. So the Battle of Sabas River, from what I have heard, it was almost the downfall of Julius Caesar in Gaul, but we'll see how Kings and Generals covers it. And as always, folks, if you're not supporting Kings and Generals, the link to this video is in the description box below. Please give them a subscription. Please be sure to like their content. They have a dedicated team that's putting together a lot of great content. So if you're not following them, please do so, because it's the right thing to do. So since I'm in charge of the ones and twos, let's pull up this video and watch the Battle of the Sabas River.
However, deeper in Belgae territory, the Nervii did have the time to organize and were not going to give up so easily. They were outraged by Caesar's foray into Belgae territory, and alongside their neighbors, the Virumandui, Atrebates, and Aduatuci, were able to gather an army of approximately 50,000 men, led by the Nervii king, Bodugnatus. Caesar, hearing that this force was gathering against him, marched for the river Sabis on the edge of Nervii territory. Bodugnatus had learned the lesson from Galba and knew that he could not allow the Romans the chance to fortify their position, and so he positioned his men in ambush on a hill on the other side of the river. He also had his troops construct hedge-like obstructions, which were placed on the other side of the river to disrupt the Roman formations and cavalry. Caesar marched his army in two groups. His veteran 6 legions, who marched in the front, were the first to reach the river, and began constructing a camp on the hill with the river in front, while the 2 newer legions marched behind with the baggage train. Caesar sent his cavalry and light infantry across the river, which was
So already the Battle of the Sabas River seems to be working against Caesar already. The enemy opponent getting ready to ambush him, and on top of that, using various barriers and obstructions to stop the Roman legions from using their normal tactics that have been so successful in Gaul. Things aren't looking good for Caesar so far. I hope his commanders are able to, I don't know, pull a victory. Now, obviously, we know how history plays out, but this must have been a very intense situation. I mean, we're so used to having satellites, Google Maps, cell phones, walkie-talkies, etc., etc., etc. The ancients didn't have that, so, not looking good so far.
Was only 3 feet deep in order to scout the opposite bank. They were met by some Nervii cavalry, and a brief skirmish broke out. However, the Belgae cavalry fell back, drawing in the Romans until the entire Nervii force broke cover and fell upon them. The Roman cavalry and light infantry broke and ran back across the river to the Roman camp, the Nervii army in hot pursuit. Thus started the Battle of the Sabis River. The Belgae moved from the woods and across the river so
Alright, come on, Romans, you got this.
Had almost no time to prepare. However, their experience and discipline kicked in. Rallying to the nearest cohort and legionary standards, they were able to put together a coherent battle line. But as the legionary engineers did not have time to clear the campsite as they usually would, the legions were divided by the hedge-like obstructions laid down by Bodugnatus, which prevented them from forming a cohesive formation. As a result, the legions were almost fighting 3 separate battles, the 10th and the 9th on the left against the Atrebati, the 11th and 8th in the centre against the Virumandui, and the 12th and 7th on the right against the largest group, the Nervii, with 2 remaining legions still with the baggage train yet to
And Caesar's 10th Legion, his personal favorite, leading the way
join the battle. The fighting was brutal, with Caesar himself going from group to group, encouraging his men. Eventually the Roman left was able to push their enemy back enough to hurl their javelins into their ranks and charge. They were able to force the Atrebati back across the river, even making it into the Belgae camp. The Roman centre was also finding success, pushing the Virimandui down to the banks of the river.
Good. All right.
However,
so the left and the center are holding. Huge shout out to the 10th Legion. But the right, now I've heard about this and how it almost came onto full collapse.
Roman right was having a hard time. With the centre pushing forwards, the Nervii poured into the gap, almost surrounding the 12th and 7th legions and falling upon the auxiliaries who had retreated to the camp. The remaining auxiliaries, including most of the Roman cavalry who had been marching in front of the baggage train, saw this and fled, assuming the Roman right had been completely destroyed and the battle lost. They were not without reason. The 12th had lost their standard, their chief centurion, most of the other centurions, and the Romans were beginning to break. Seeing this disaster, Caesar knew he would have to do something or risk losing the whole campaign. Snatching up a shield, he pushed himself to the front line of the legion, bolstering the morale of the men.
All right, it's easy to act tough and brave, but, can you imagine battles like that? It's the madness, the screaming, the yelling, the clashing of swords against shields, your opponent wanting to kill you, and not to mention, thinking about it, as mentioned earlier in the video, 3 different battles are taking place. So, again, communication is key. I do hope one of the, I think it's either the center or I believe the left, and will probably be the left, at least looking at the map, are going to be the ones to at least bring in some kind of relief for Caesar and the legions right now that are fighting for their lives.
With the 7th Legion under heavy pressure as well, Caesar ordered them to form a defensive square with the 12th and hold their ground. At this point, the battle began to swing in the Romans' favour. Labienus, in charge of the 10th and 9th legions, saw what was happening from the other side of the river and sent the 10th to relieve the Roman right, while the remaining 2 legions had finally joined the battle and were attacking the Nervii in the Roman camp. The Roman auxiliary cavalry also returned to the battle, seeing this change in fortune, and now it was the Nervii who faced disaster. The Virimandui had fled upon seeing the Roman reinforcements, and the Nervii were now surrounded. They fought bravely, and even Caesar commended them later, but their defeat was now inevitable. The Belgae casualties were devastating, Caesar saying that just 500 survived the battle. The Roman losses had also been high, with perhaps as many as 5,000 Romans dead. Without Caesar's personal leadership and the timely interventions of the legions, it is likely that the battle would have been lost, Caesar killed, and the campaign ended. But the battle was over, and Caesar was once again victorious.
All right, we're going to stop here. Now, obviously, this is a short video, but let's look at what we have seen firsthand of Julius Caesar. He is a very charismatic leader, and he has seasoned warrior veterans that will perhaps, maybe, not to foreshadow, kind of sort of may be needed for a potential civil war between himself and the Roman Republic. But that's later on down the road. We're still in Gaul. But my goodness, it perhaps if the tribes in Gaul were able to put in more, I don't know, obstacles, things that would prevent Roman reinforcement, perhaps maybe if they got more tribes to join their confederation, the battle would have turned differently. But Caesar was able to turn the tide with his leadership, with his military forces, and with, I guess, good communication with his commanders. I am curious to know, though, how word was given back and forth to the Roman legions, because Thankfully, the 10th came in to save the 12th and the 7th that were being surrounded. So if anyone would like to enlighten or add in more to the conversation, please type it in the comment section below. As always, we will continue on with our campaign in Gaul with Julius Caesar, and I ask you, our viewing audience, to please support the original content creators, kings and generals. That link to this video is in the description box below, so if you don't gotta get it, if you don't get it, go figure it out. But we'll see you next time here on Americans Learns. Peace.